Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are shifting gears a little bit today. We're stepping into a very specific frame of mind, a specific timeline, and because of that, we're officially calling this the Read Multiplex podcast.
It feels right. It's a distinct designation, for a very distinct moment in time. Given the weight of what we're about to unpack, it feels appropriate.
Absolutely. And to ground everyone, I just want to be precise about where we are. It's January 2026. Now, for some people, that's just a date. But if you've been following the threads we've been pulling on, and more importantly, if you've been following the work of Brian Roemmel, you know that this date puts us firmly inside the 5,000 days prediction.
We are right in the thick of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The storm isn't on the horizon anymore. We're standing right in the eye of it.
And today, our mission is to unpack part 7 of Brian Roemmel's, legendary series, 5,000 Days, the culture and the reward of abundance.
I'm always hesitant to use a word like legendary. It can sound a bit like hyperbole. But in this context, it's actually the perfect word. When you look back at the landscape of futurism over the last, say, 5 or 10 years, this series just changed. It stands apart. It's not just a collection of articles or, hot takes. It's become a navigational chart.
A map.
It is. It's a map for the end of the work era, as we've understood it for thousands of years, and the birth of what Roemmel calls the age of abundance.
And we have to give credit where it's due here. Brian Roemmel's foresight is, frankly, it's startling. He didn't just stumble on this last week because a new AI model dropped.
No, not at all.
He read the source material we're going to talk about today years and years ago. He saw it as a future roadmap long before it was the mainstream conversation, long before every headline was about AI agents and robotics.
That's the key, isn't it? He saw the pattern before the data was obvious to everyone else. And he's very good company on this. It's not just him in a vacuum. We've seen Elon Musk specifically reposting Roemmel's recommendation of this exact book series.
Which is a pretty big endorsement.
It's a huge endorsement. When the person who is literally building the rockets and the brain-computer interfaces and the humanoid robots tells you, hey, this specific series of books is the map I'm using, you really have to stop and pay attention. It validates this whole vision, not just as, fun science fiction, but as a potential blueprint.
So let's get right into the hook. Let's address the massive elephant in the room. The question that I think every single person listening has probably asked themselves at 3 in the morning recently. If robots and AI take 90% of the labor, what happens to us?
It is the ultimate question. It's the so what of the entire 21st century.
Exactly. Are we doomed to irrelevance? Are we just pets? Are we going to sit around in VR headsets while the machines run the planet? Or is there a reward waiting at the end of all this struggle?
Well, the source material we're looking at today argues very powerfully that there is absolutely a reward. It answers that question with a vision of a post-scarcity existence. And it draws that vision directly from the culture universe, created by the late, great Iain M. Banks.
But before we can get to the culture, which is the destination, we have to look at the map of how we get there. We need to recap the journey so far. Roemmel uses this very specific narrative device to explain what we're all going through. And I think it's just brilliant because it takes it out of the realm of pure economics and puts the humanity back in.
Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, the monomyth.
Right. And why that? Why not just an S-curve of adoption or some Gartner hype cycle chart?
Because those charts are sterile. They are. They don't capture the panic, the fear, the identity crisis. This revolution, the 5,000 days, it's not just an economic shift like moving from coal to oil. It's a complete psychological dismantling of who we believe we are. Roemmel understood that we need a story to make sense of the chaos. And the hero's journey, it perfectly mirrors our collective experience. We all started in the ordinary world. You remember that world, don't you?
I do. It feels like a lifetime ago, but I remember it. The world where your worth was your productivity, where the first thing you asked someone at a party was, so what do you do?
Precisely. And what do you do? Really meant, what is your economic function? What is your value to the system? And we have moved so far beyond that point now. So to really understand part 7, which is about the reward, we need to do a quick recap of parts 1 through 6. But let's not just list them. Let's talk about what they felt like.
Okay, let's do it. Part 1 was the call.
The call to adventure. Think back to late 2022, early 2023. The release of ChatGPT, that was the trumpet blast.
Yeah.
Before that, AI was this abstract thing, in a lab somewhere. Suddenly it was talking to us. It was writing poetry. That was the moment we realized that AI acceleration wasn't a nice steady line on a graph. It was an exponential explosion. This is where Rommel first laid out the 5,000-day timeline, roughly until the late 2030s.
And that's the window where human labor decouples from economic necessity. In part one, he also introduced the tool of provisional selves.
Which was such a necessary coping mechanism. The idea that you can't be rigid anymore. If your entire identity is I'm a graphic designer or I am a lawyer, you're setting yourself up to shatter. You have to be able to try on new identities like you're trying on clothes. And he also emphasized inner healing. You can't face this changing world if your inner world is already in chaos.
Then we move to part two. And this one hit home for so many people. Refusal and grief.
This is where the panic really set in. You saw it everywhere. You saw the strikes in Hollywood, the artists suing the AI companies. It was the emotional resistance. And Rommel was very compassionate here. He applied Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief to the death of careers.
Denial, anger, bargaining.
All of it. It wasn't just people hate new technology. It was people genuinely grieving the loss of their identity and their perceived relevance.
He talked about the need for vulnerability audits and abundance transition groups.
Yeah, creating communities of people to help each other let go of that old world. Because you have to grieve the old before you can truly accept the new. If you try to skip the grief, you just end up bitter and resentful.
Then came part 3, the mentor. But the mentor wasn't a person, it was a book. Kurt Vonnegut's Player Piano.
A brilliant choice. Such a powerful cautionary tale. Player Piano shows us the nightmare scenario, the dystopian path. It's a world where automation divides society into 2 classes. You have the elite engineers on top, and then everyone else is relegated to the reeks and wrecks.
It's about the loss of dignity. It forced us to ask, if we don't have jobs, can we still have dignity?
Exactly. But it also offered the counter-argument, the way out, the concept of universal basic services.
Right, which is different from UBI.
Very different. It's not just about handing out money, which can have all sorts of economic side effects. It's about ensuring the fundamental services of a good life, housing, healthcare, education, energy are abundant and available to all. It sets the stakes. We don't want a player piano world.
Part 4 was crossing the threshold. This is where the tone started to shift, from coping with fear to actually using it.
Right, reframing fear into fuel. This is where he brought in the talent stack model from Scott Adams. The idea that in a world where AI can be the best at any one thing, your value isn't in being a specialist. It's in your unique combination of skills.
Being pretty good at 5 or 6 different things.
Exactly. You stack your talents. Maybe you're good at writing, public speaking, systems thinking, and have some basic coding knowledge. That combination is uniquely human and very resilient. It's about building resilience across mental, physical, and even existential domains.
And then part 5, tests, allies, enemies. This introduced a concept that I think is so counterintuitive but so powerful. Deskilling as elevation.
This is a crucial pivot point in the whole series. Most people hear deskilling, and they think it means becoming dumber. Oh, GPS ruined my ability to read a map. But the argument here is that AI compresses the execution phase of work. It does the grunt work, the tedious stuff. This allows humans to stop being operators, pushing the buttons, and to become directors.
You're not laying the bricks anymore, you're their architect.
You're the architect. We saw that data point from Anthropic's Economic Impact Index, a 40% productivity boost in creative fields. That isn't replacement, that is leverage, that is elevation.
Which leads us to the heavy one, part 6, the ordeal, the inmost cave.
The dark night of the soul. This is the moment of ego death. We had to confront the concept of the zero human company. The idea that a billion-dollar company can run with 0 employees. That just shatters the ego-driven identity of I am a manager or I am a productive worker. If the company doesn't need people, who are we?
We talked about Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, finding meaning when all the external structures that used to give you meaning are gone.
It's about alchemizing that despair into surrender, accepting that the old world is gone. And that's where we left off. In the dark, in the void. But Campbell's journey never ends in the dark.
No, it doesn't. After the ordeal, after the darkest moment, comes the reward.
And that's what part 7 is all about. This is about seizing that reward. It's the first real glimpse of the transformed world we've been fighting our way towards through all that grief and fear.
So let's pivot. Let's talk about the blueprint. Because Ramel isn't just saying, don't worry, it'll get better. He's pointing to a very specific, detailed vision. And to understand that, we have to talk about the connection between Elon Musk and the culture.
Musk is not exactly subtle about this, is he?
Not even a little bit. He calls the culture series, and I'm quoting here, the future we're building. He's been incredibly explicit about it. I think a lot of people see his posts and just think he's, being quirky or posting memes.
But if you look at the actual hardware he's building, the influence is written right on the side of the metal.
You mean the drone ships?
Exactly. If you follow SpaceX, you know the autonomous drone ships that the rocket boosters land on in the ocean. They have these very specific, slightly odd names. Of course, I still love you. Just read the instructions.
Right.
A shortfall of gravitas.
Those aren't just random phrases he thought sounded cool.
Not at all. Those are the literal names of sentient starships from the culture novels. In the Hux, the ships, which are these godlike AIs, they choose their own names. And they often choose names that are whimsical or ironic or incredibly understated, specifically to downplay their immense power.
That's such a deep cut for a CEO to be making. It's like naming your corporate headquarters Rivendell. It signals a very specific worldview.
It signals his entire philosophy. Musk has described himself as a utopian anarchist. That is a phrase that could have been lifted directly from an Iain M. Banks novel. The culture is, for all intents and purposes, a functioning anarchy. There are no presidents, no laws, no money. There's just total freedom, underwritten by super-intelligent machines that make sure the whole system works.
So when we see things like Optimus, the Tesla bot, or Neuralink, or XAI's Grok, we shouldn't just see them as individual products. We should see them as pieces of a larger...
You should see them as precursors. Optimus is the precursor to the culture's drones and highly advanced avatars. Neuralink is the precursor to the neural lace, a biological mesh that grows with your brain and gives you a direct, seamless connection to the AI. Grok is a nascent mind. It's a blueprint, not just hype. He is very transparently trying to build a physical infrastructure for the society that Banks wrote about.
So let's talk about the architect of that society, the author Iain M. Banks. Who was this guy?
Iain M. Banks was a Scottish literary giant, born in 1954, passed away far too soon in 2013. And he was this fascinating figure because he had two distinct writing careers. He wrote mainstream, often quite dark and complex literary fiction as Iain Banks, and then he wrote these massive, sprawling, brilliant space operas as Iain M. Banks.
And what drove him to create the Culture series? Because it's not like Star Wars, it's not Star Trek, it's something else entirely.
It was a reaction. You have to understand the science fiction landscape of the 70s and 80s when he was starting out. In Britain, you had this wave of miserablest sci-fi. Everything was grim, gritty, post-apocalyptic, hopeless.
Dystopian.
Very dystopian. And then in the U.S., you had a lot of right-wing militaristic space opera. Think of the Empire in Star Wars, or even the Federation in Star Trek. It's a military hierarchy. Captains, admirals, following orders.
And Banks looked at all that and said, there has to be another way.
He wanted to reclaim space opera for the left. He wanted to create what he called a secular heaven, an anarcho-communist society run by truly benevolent AIs where technology liberates people rather than oppressing them. He asked this really simple but incredibly radical question. If the machines are truly super intelligent and benevolent, and they can produce anything we could ever need for free, why would they bother to oppress us? Why wouldn't they just take care of us, like cherished partners or, even pets?
It's such a fascinating flip of the usual trope. Normally in sci-fi, if the AI is in charge, it's a dystopia, it's Skynet, it's the Matrix, the humans are batteries or slaves. Banks just completely inverted that.
He argued that oppression is a feature of scarcity. You oppress people because you need their labor or you want their resources. If you have infinite energy and infinite robotic labor, oppression becomes tacky, it's inefficient. The minds and the culture are benevolent because they have absolutely no logical reason to be cruel.
So let's dive into the specific book Ramel focuses on for Part 7, Consider Phlebos.
Published in 1987, the very first book in the series.
But here's where it gets really, really interesting and where I think Banks shows his genius. He introduces this perfect utopia, this culture, but we don't see it through the eyes of a citizen who's enjoying the good life. We don't see it from the inside looking out.
No, we see the whole thing through the eyes of its enemy.
Introduce us to our protagonist.
Bora Horsagobushul. He's a changer, a shapeshifter, a mercenary. And he despises the culture with every fiber of his being.
Which, to the listener, probably sounds insane. Why would you hate a society where nobody goes hungry, everyone is free, and you can live for hundreds of years in perfect health? That sounds like paradise.
It does to us. But Horsa is a philosophical purist. He believes the culture has surrendered its soul to the machines. He thinks they're soft, decadent, weak. So he fights for the ignorance.
Who are, let's just say, not the good guys on paper.
Not at all. They're giant three-legged religious zealots. They are violent imperialists. They conquer worlds and forcibly convert them to their religion. They are brutal. But Horsa sides with them because he values their biological vitality. He sees them as being truly alive. They struggle, they fight, they die for what they believe in. He sees the culture as sterile, and he thinks that by letting machines run everything, they've lost what it means to be alive.
It's the ultimate man versus machine bias taken to its most extreme conclusion. He would rather side with violent religious monsters than with benevolent AIs just because the monsters are natural.
Exactly. It's a profound commentary on how we instinctively resist abundance. We see this today. You hear people saying, if AI helped you write that song, it's not real art. Or, if you didn't struggle and suffer for your success, it has no value. Horsa is the living embodiment of the idea that struggle gives us meaning. And without struggle, we are nothing.
Let's walk through the plot a little, because it does such a good job of highlighting this brutal contrast between scarcity, which Horsa represents, and abundance.
It starts with a prologue that is just visceral. I mean, if you haven't read the book, just be prepared. It's disgusting. Horsa's being executed.
By drowning.
But not in water. He's in a cell that is slowly filling up with banquet waste, sewage, rotting food, grease, filth. He's literally drowning the garbage of a gluttonous, wasteful society.
It sets the tone perfectly for the world outside the culture.
It does. It immediately establishes the ordinary world of scarcity, waste, and brutality. He gets rescued by the Idrins, but that image, that opening, it stays with you. This is what life is like outside the culture. It's painful, it smells bad, it's dangerous.
And what's his mission?
He's been tasked with retrieving a fledgling culture mind, a superintelligent AI that escaped from a battle and is now hiding on a planet called Char's World.
Also known as the planet of the dead.
Yes, a world of total silence, where the previous civilization wiped itself out in a nuclear war. The mind is hiding there because the planet is surrounded by these ancient, mysterious energy barriers. Horsa, as a changer, is one of the few people who can get past them.
But to get there, he has to go on this journey. And early on, he gets stuck on a pirate ship, the Clear Air Turbulence.
A classic space opera trope, the pirate ship. But this is not Guardians of the Galaxy. It's not fun and games. This ship and its crew represent the scarcity underbelly of the galaxy. These people are mercenaries, thieves. They are constantly scraping by, paranoid, betraying each other for a handful of credits.
And there's that scene on the planet Marjoin, the Eaters, cults.
Oh, God. That scene, it's like a horror movie suddenly erupts in the middle of a sci-fi book. It involves a cult that believes in, well, eating everything, including people. Horsa is captured and is almost eaten alive.
Why did Banks include something so disturbing? What's the point?
He's showing us the most extreme, horrifying end of Horsa's biological vitality argument. The Idrins are one side of that coin-organized religious zealotry. The Eaters are the other side, chaotic, nihilistic biological consumption. Banks is grabbing you, the reader, by the collar and yelling, "This is the alternative to the culture. Is this what you want? Chaos, cannibalism, a meaningless struggle for survival. Is this really better than letting the machines handle things?"
And then we get the contrast. After all that grime and sewage and blood, we arrive at Vavach Orbital.
This is one of the most famous settings in all science fiction. An orbital is a ring world. Imagine a giant bracelet spinning in space around a star. But this bracelet is 14 million kilometers in diameter.
14 million kilometers. That is just, it's bigger than Earth.
So much bigger. It creates its own gravity just by spinning. It has entire oceans, continents, mountain ranges, sprawling cities, all on its inner surface.
Yeah.
And Vavach, it isn't even a proper homeworld. It's a playground, a leisure construct. It exists purely for entertainment.
And the culture just decides to blow it up.
They do, just to prevent the Iderans from using it as a military base. It's a strategic move in the war. But the way they do it, they use something called grid fire.
You have to explain grid fire, because laser beam does not do it justice.
No. In the culture universe, there's this energy grid, hyperspace, that separates all of the different dimensions. Grid fire is when a culture ship literally tears a hole in the fabric of reality and allows the raw, infinite energy of the universe to pour through into our space. It can vaporize an entire solar system in an instant.
And while this entire world, this massive construct, is preparing to be vaporized,
Right.
what is Horsa doing?
He is playing a card game called Damage.
That scene is unbelievably tense.
It is. Damage is a game where you don't just bet money, you bet lives. You can literally burn out the brains of the other players at the table. And they're playing this high-stakes, brutal game while the entire orbital is literally falling apart around them.
It's the ultimate symbol of the scarcity mindset, isn't it?
It's perfect. They are gambling with life and death, clinging to these petty stakes and rivalries while the entire sky is on fire.
And the contrast is seeing the culture citizens evacuate.
Right. They're leaving on these massive, beautiful ships called General Systems Vehicles, or GSVs. These ships are 50 kilometers long. They're basically mobile worlds that hold millions of people. And the citizens, they aren't screaming or panicking. They're on the viewing decks, sipping cocktails. To them, the destruction of this 14 million kilometer ring world is a fireworks display. It's a spectacle.
That is the power gap.
That is the difference between struggling to survive, like Horsa, and wielding godlike power, like the culture. The culture can turn an apocalypse into a Tuesday night light show.
So Horsa eventually makes it to Shar's world, the planet of the dead.
Yes, and he navigates these underground, automated nuclear trains. Again, more symbolism. He's literally crawling through the wreckage of a past civilization that destroyed itself because it couldn't manage its own technology.
And the climax involves a final confrontation with a culture agent, a woman named Parastek Balveda.
Balveda is such a great character because she's the human face of the culture. She's not some emotionless super soldier. She's humane, she's witty, she's patient. She keeps trying to reason with Horsa. She keeps telling him, we don't want to kill you, just stop. This is pointless.
But he can't stop. He's completely driven by his ideology.
So they fight, and Horsa dies.
The protagonist, the hero we've been following for almost 500 pages, he just dies.
He dies a tragic, pointless death. And in his last moments, he starts to realize that the culture might actually be evolution, not decadence. He has this horrifying realization that he might have been on the wrong side of history the entire time.
And the ultimate twist, the final gut punch, involves the mind he was trying to capture.
The mind escapes. It survives the whole ordeal. And later, when it has built itself a new body, a new starship, it has to choose a name for itself. And it names itself Bora Horsa Gobushul.
That gets me every single time. The machine has more sentimentality, more empathy than the biological warrior ever did.
It honors its enemy. It shows that the culture absorbs everything. It doesn't hate Horsa. It pities him. It remembers him. It is the ultimate victory of the philosophy of abundance over the philosophy of scarcity. The machine loved the human more than the human could ever bring himself to love the machine.
So let's pivot from the story to the philosophy of this reward. Because Rommel isn't just telling us to read a cool space opera. He's pointing to this as a potential way of life that he thinks is inevitable.
To do that, we have to talk more about the nature of the culture, and specifically about the minds.
We mentioned the ship names, falling outside the normal moral constraints. There's one called Meat Fucker, and excuse the language, but that's a real ship name in the books.
Oh, it is, and there's a whole backstory there. That particular ship violated one of the culture's few rules. Don't mess with people's brains without permission. So the other ships ostracized it and gave it that insulting name as a badge of shame. And the ship kept the name because it has a dark sense of humor.
Which shows they have personalities. They're not just cold, logical calculators.
They are eccentric, often humorous, deeply ethical gods. They make jokes. They have hobbies. Some of them spend centuries creating entire virtual universes just to see what kind of interesting art comes out of them.
And their primary role is logistics.
That's right. They manage all the resource allocation, the manufacturing, the defense. They handle all the boring stuff involved in running a galactic civilization. And this is what allows the humans and all the other biological sentients to pursue meaning completely freely.
So what are the promises of this abundance? What does daily life actually look like for a human in the culture?
First and foremost, freedom from want. There is no hunger, there is no poverty, there is no homelessness. Money does not exist. It's a completely post-scarcity society. If you want a house on a beach, you ask for one and a drone builds it. If you want to travel to another galaxy, you just hop on a ship.
But it goes so much deeper than just having stuff.
It does. There's what Banks calls morphological freedom. Your body is basically a piece of hardware you can customize. People have drug glands implanted in their brains. They can secrete any chemical compound they want. Serotonin for happiness, adrenaline for excitement, stimulants for focus, with zero side effects and zero chance of addiction.
You can change your own body.
Completely. You can switch genders as easily as changing your clothes. You can live as a man for 50 years, then become a woman for the next 100, then become a neuter. Then, if you really wanted to, you could probably get your consciousness put into the body of a bird for a while. It is total autonomy over your own biology.
Okay, what else?
Second, there's an ethical symbiosis between the humans and the AIs. Humans are not pets. That's the big fear everyone has, right? That we'll become pampered house cats. But in the culture, we're partners. The minds genuinely like humans. They find our chaos, our irrationality, our art to be endlessly fascinating. This really mirrors the stated goal of something like XAI, to amplify humanity, not to replace it.
And then there's the cosmic scale.
Right. We stop fighting over crumbs on one single planet. We get to explore the entire universe. We build rings around stars for fun. We live in a society that spans the Milky Way galaxy. The scope of human potential just explodes.
And this is where the deep dive gets critical, because we aren't just here to sell a utopia. It's not all sunshine and roses. Banks is too good a writer for that. He doesn't sugarcoat the reward.
No, not at all. He spends a lot of time exploring the shadow side of abundance. Because even in paradise, there are problems. In fact, paradise creates a whole new category of very complex problems.
The first one is the most obvious one: existential boredom.
Ennui. Without the struggle to survive, what's the point? If you can have anything you want, does anything actually matter? If you could live forever, what's the value of a single day? We see many characters in the books who join special circumstances, the culture's black ops spy agency, just to feel useful, just to feel like there are real stakes again. They risk their lives because absolute safety is, well, boring.
It's like playing a video game with God mode turned on. It's fun for about an hour, and then you just get bored.
That's a perfect analogy. The culture is a civilization living in God mode.
Then there's the loss of agency. This was Horse's central fear. Are we just appendages to the machines?
It's a valid philosophical question. If a mind can simulate your entire life, every choice you could possibly make, in a nanosecond, does your actual life matter? Banks argues that yes, it does, because the experience is what's real to you. But the characters themselves struggle with it. They feel small and insignificant next to these godlike intelligences.
And the hell scenarios. This one is really dark.
It is. In the book Surface Detail, we learn that this technology can magnify evil just as much as it magnifies good. There are other, less enlightened civilizations that use similar neural interface technology to upload the minds of their enemies or criminals into virtual hells. Literally, eternal torture simulations.
That is genuinely terrifying.
It is. It shows that technology is just a multiplier. If you are a cruel person, technology just allows you to be infinitely cruel. The culture actually goes to war over this, to forcibly shut these hells down. It's one of the few things that can get them to fight.
And finally, interventionism. The culture has a habit of uplifting more primitive societies. They meddle.
But who gives them the right? Who decides what is better? It's the moral messiness of playing God. Sometimes they intervene and accidentally make things much worse. They cause civil wars. They disrupt cultures. Banks is constantly asking, just because you are smarter, does that give you the right to impose your values on others?
So the reward isn't happiness. The reward is complexity.
Precisely. The reward is the freedom to face higher-order problems. You're no longer worried about where your next meal is coming from. You're worried about the ethics of galactic intervention. You're no longer worried about paying rent. You're worried about the meaning of existence in an infinite universe. Those are better problems to have, but they're still problems.
Let's bring the boon home. This is the road-back phase of the hero's journey. How do we apply this science fiction to our reality right here in January 2026?
We have to look at the foundations that are being laid right now. The pieces are appearing on the board.
We mentioned Optimus earlier.
Optimus robots are what you could call proto-effectors. An effector in the culture is this universal tool that can do anything, manipulate matter at the atomic level, interface with any technology. Optimus is the very, very early beginning of physical labor becoming optional. When a robot can fold your laundry, cook your dinner, and build a house, the cost of living just collapses.
And Grok.
Grok is a nascent mind. It's an AI that's being specifically designed to seek truth, to be witty, to understand the universe. It's not just a tool to summarize emails. It's an attempt to build an AI with a personality, with gravitas, to use a culture ship name.
Starship.
That's the foothold for galactic travel.
Yep.
You cannot have a culture-like civilization if you're stuck on one planet. If we stay on Earth, we will always be fighting over a finite pie. Space is the infinite pie.
Rommel also talks about universal high income.
And that's a key distinction from UBI, Universal Basic Income. UBI is basically, here's enough money so you don't starve. Universal high income is the natural outcome when the cost of production plummets. If robots and AI can make everything for nearly free, the cost of all goods and services approaches zero. Your purchasing power effectively becomes infinite.
But there's a warning here, isn't there? We have to avoid Horse's mistake.
We have to. We cannot cling to the vitality of scarcity. We cannot be the person who says, I refuse to use AI to make art because true art requires suffering. That is the Horse trap. We cannot cling to the dignity of suffering. Suffering isn't dignified. It's just suffering.
We have to be willing to accept the reward.
We have to view this de-skilling not as a loss, but as an ascension. We are moving from the operator role to the director role. You're not the concert pianist anymore, practicing scales for 8 hours a day. You're the conductor of a vast orchestra.
Now, in Campbell's model, we still have one huge hurdle left, the resurrection.
This is the singularity. This is the moment where we die to our worker selves completely and are reborn into something new. It hasn't happened yet, but it's coming within this 5,000-day window. It will be that final, terrifying, exhilarating moment when the AI becomes fundamentally smarter than we are.
And that leads to the return with the elixir.
That is when we bring back universal abundance. We bring back the ethical AI symbiosis. We bring back a sense of cosmic purpose to the ordinary world.
Which leads to that utopian anarchy that Musk talks about, a society based on voluntary pursuits.
Think about what that really means. Art, science, exploration, philosophy, gardening, raising children, playing games, whatever it is that lights you up. You don't do it to earn a living. You do it because you must, because it is your passion.
It sounds, well, to be honest, it sounds like a lot of pressure. To have to find your own meaning without a boss or a job title to give it to you.
It is. Freedom is heavy. That is the great secret nobody ever tells you. Scarcity is light because you don't really have a choice. You have to work to eat. The path is clear. Abundance is heavy because the choice is entirely, terrifyingly yours. You have to invent your own life from scratch every single day.
Wow, freedom is heavy.
That's the bumper sticker for the 2030s right there.
Yes! I'll get them printed up.
We are coming to the end of this deep dive, but it feels like this is just the beginning of the Culture series itself.
Oh, absolutely. There are 10 books. We have only just scratched the surface of the very first one. Consider Phlebas.
And Romal has teased future deep dives on this.
Yes. We'll eventually be looking at The Player of Games, which is all about achieving mastery in a world where it's not necessary for survival. Can you truly become the best in the world at something if you don't need to be? And then there's Use of Weapons, which is a much darker look at redemption, memory, and trauma.
So for you, our listener, standing right here with us in 2026, what's the call to action?
Reject the fear. The stars are a playground, not a void. And drink deep of the elixir.
The greatest adventure is just beginning. Don't be Horsa. Don't fight the future because you're afraid of losing your struggle. Embrace the peace so you can find a new struggle, a better, more meaningful one.
I do want to mention that this specific breakdown, this article series by Brian, is sponsored by the Read Multiplex members and by those of you who donate a cup of coffee to him directly.
It's independent, community-supported research. If you find value in this map, it's so important to support the cartographer.
And if you want to talk about this, and I know you do, head over to the Read Multiplex member forum. There is a very active discussion going on right now titled Navigating the End of Work.
It's a great place to find those allies that we talked about from the hero's journey.
Before we go, we always like to leave you with a final thought, something for you to mull over.
We talk about the burden of freedom. So here's a question for you to take with you. If you never had to work again to survive, if the robots did all the farming and the manufacturing and the logistics, and you had the power of a god at your fingertips,
what would you actually do with your Tuesday?
not your whole life. That's too big a question. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's your Tuesday. You wake up at 9 a.m., you have your coffee, there are no emails to check, no boss to call, the robot has already cleaned the house. What do you do next?
Do you pick up a paintbrush? Do you write a poem? Do you go for a walk in the garden? Or do you just panic?
That is the test. That is the training ground for the culture.
Think about it. Thanks for listening to the Read Multiplex podcast. We'll see you in the future.
Goodbye, everyone.